Well, there's some crazy stuff going on, and I think it's important that we should talk about it. And I think it's important that people need to hear this because uh, it's a heated warning, and it's not coming from me. So don't get any ideas, but but it's kind of frightening. So stick around.
And now we interrupt, disrupt, and crash this station.
The man fighting for peace, his legacy, truth in a sea of stupid.
Filtered for your sarcastic enjoyment, Ghost Getter.
I've been hearing some chatter lately, and it's no surprise to me that there are some people out there. It's not just your crazy, well, I wouldn't call them crazy, end of the world preppers, anything like that, because actually right now they're pretty smart, but it's not really going to do any good. But there's a lot of chatter going out there about a lot of religions and stuff are preparing because they think that we are in our last days. And I do believe this quite a bit because of some of the scriptures I've read before, and some of the things I've heard over the years since I can remember. These things that were told that were going to happen are starting to come about today. And I've told people what I've heard over the years coming from this. And it's not, I take no credit again for it. It's God's word. But it can't be denied because a lot of these things have been said for years and years ago. And these are the things that frightened me as a child. And we're starting to see it now. And I knew it was coming. And just because it's not of religion or anything trying to scare you into something, because what they did say was the truth, and we're starting to see a lot of it now. Now, there's nothing I can't really go and watch the internet or TV or anything in society anymore without seeing violence breaking out. I told you, if we keep playing with evil in this world, if we keep playing with Ouija boards, keep conjuring things up, we keep asking for it, we're going to get what we ask for, and it's not going to be pretty. You ever heard the saying, don't wish for things, don't wish for certain things, because you may just get it and you may not like it. Don't wish for what you ask for, something like that. But I've heard the chatter, and a lot of times I don't say a word. I just look around and I'll listen to the way other people talk. I'll listen to some of the stories that are being said. I'll see what's going on TV. I'll watch what's going on in my neighborhood and different things like that, and I can see what groups are talking about. And this is probably the most frightening time that I have ever witnessed in my entire life. I think we are in our last days. I am seeing, and I have said years ago, and like I said, this is not coming from me. I have gotten the message, and I've told other people that in our last days, chaos will break out in the streets, which is happening now, and it's getting worse, and it's going to get worse. The Middle East will destroy itself, which it's heading in that direction, with the threats from Israel and Iran and everything like that. More strange things are going to be witnessed. Unlike animals will be acting strangely. Just strange, odd things are going to be witnessed, and we're seeing a lot of that now. And we can go on and on and on for days about it. But one of the things that I wanted to mention, which is very, very accurate, is this scripture that I've seen and I've told people about recently. This is from 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. This know also that this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, which is happening today, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, and we're seeing a lot of that in the streets of our own society, truce breakers, false accusers, incontent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, which is happening today, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. That's from 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. And also there's this, 1 Timothy 4, 1 through 5. Now the Spirit speaketh expressively that in the latter times some shall depart from faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, which is going on now. 2, speaking lies of hypocrisy, which is going on a lot, which is one of my biggest pet peeves, and I have a problem with people that are like this. Having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving to themselves which believe and know the truth. So this is a common problem that we have today. Now I've watched, as I sit and I watched people shaking my head, fighting amongst each other in the streets. They have no idea what's about to happen. They have no idea or any clue of what path they're following. I sometimes think, well, it's a good thing because it just draws God's kingdom closer and ends this horrible world we're living in. I don't like, as long as I can remember, I don't like being a part of today's world. Since I was young, I've never really been welcomed as one of the people that belong in today's society, so to speak. I've been bullied my entire life, pretty much. Well, not my life, but since being a child, as far as I can remember, being, brother of mine holding my hand as I crossed the street, and a bully walking up and spitting in my face. That's probably one of my very first memories, up until I was a teenager. So I've never really was accepted in the world we're living in today. I either lost myself in music, which is hence the radio thing, or I've lost myself in spirituality, God, and all that, and it just seems like the more I've lost myself in that, the more I've started to see things, the more I started to understand things, the more He answered me when I needed things, or answered me when I didn't need things, or punished me when I shouldn't have done certain things. And it kind of spilled over into today's society. I don't get many followers on YouTube. I'm not the most popular in the jobs that I've had. I'm not really, I don't follow the crowd, so I'm pretty much waved on because I don't do a lot of things that people do. I'm a lot different than a lot of people, and but I do see, and I think that the better part of me has always been from the church that I grew up in and the people that I've known. Those have been always the better people than the people that I've had experience with in this world. Well, there are very few. There are a few people that were great, and they still are. But for the most part, my entire life has not been a kind of person that has been accepted in this world, and it is very satanic. There's a lot of things that go on that a lot of people don't see that I see every day, and I watch everything. it frustrates me and it bothers me, and it can be really, really upsetting, and I have been for the last week or so, because there is a past. Everybody makes mistakes and everybody does things that are wrong, and I tried to be a part of this world, and I made promises that I didn't keep, and I was punished for it. This is one of those things where I said a long time ago that, three things. There's three things I know in life. I don't know squat. I know God exists, and He showed me 1 and 2. This goes along with one of those things. And so I see people fighting in the street, and I see people, the hypocrisy of people standing there holding signs and saying, peace, or people standing holding lines and say love everyone, or, acceptance, while they're beating each other up because they don't accept the other person, which is hypocrisy, which a lot of things are just followed in the scripture I just gave you. And I see a lot of that, and it's getting worse, and it won't be long to where chaos will break out in the streets, and probably there will be a civil war. I would not be surprised at this. It would not surprise me one bit if Trump wins again. And at this point, with the way the things are going so far, he probably will, because he's not because of being the type of Republican or Democrat or anything like that. It's got a lot to do with he knows how. He's a businessman, and he knows how to give to the customer, so to speak. And people voted for him because there are certain things they wanted, and he gave it to them. For the most part, the opposite has been attacking him on everything from his personal life to, but they have not been able to prove him wrong when it comes to things that he's done, like, the economy and things like that. All they do is attack him personally. And it's driving up the public, the people that don't like him, and making them more and more and more and more and more angry, to the point where they're just going crazy. Now they have this stupid thing about Trump anxiety, where people go into the doctor now because they're so upset that these bad things are happening, and it's called Trump anxiety. It's outrageous. But if he wins again, it is a guarantee that people will get very violent. So it's got nothing to do with politics. It's got a lot to do with society and God's plan or prophecy, which is basically what's going to happen. Now, with that said, there are other things that are just outrageous. The same things that happened to Rome and your past history. If you just look at your history, these are the kinds of things that were going on before these empires fell, like Rome and so on and so forth. People don't even know their own gender anymore. There's people that are saying, well, I'm just going to put their birth certificate blank, which is totally insane when you think about it. There's just all kinds of things that are going on that are just, it's chaos now. Chaos and confusion. No one even knows how to think or how to move or how to act anymore, and it's gotten that way. I wasn't involved in music. I was involved in more of the God aspect, talking to God, or seeing who's causing more of the bad and who's doing more of the good, and praying more in my head, and just, it's almost like a friend or a father or a mentor that you're speaking to on a constant basis of anything that happens. You see that, or I won't do this, or I try not to do that, or, just talk about everyday life, or, when you're alone. That sort of thing, prayers, and just trying to do the best I can. And of course, I have not been perfect in my lifetime. I am glad that I got in the situation that I have been. And He has shown me things that I've seen the weird come out of this world, but I've also seen things that other people just would not believe. I have been confronted by things you would not believe. I have been punished in ways where it was like totally unbelievable. Could write a book on this stuff. So I know, and for the longest time, I felt anxiety when it comes to getting closer to the end time, and I felt anxiety about in our last days. But recently, it's been more and more of a feeling, a frightening feeling, and you can prepare for it all day long, or month long, or year long. You can save up your water, you can save up food, you can whatever to save your life, but it's going to get to you one way or another. It's coming for you, and there's no way to hide from it. I say, if it's not too late, because I am trying to protect myself by becoming closer to God, and using that as a suit of armor, as my own weapon, instead of pulling out a gun, which I know live by the sword, die by the sword, will not work. But I know that putting your faith and trust in Him will work, because it has in the past. And I have strayed away and made mistakes before in my lifetime, and I know it's and I know I've paid for it. It's sometimes not really funny, but to me it's like, seriously. So, yeah, I mean, there are things that I know that are coming, and I feel it. One big story I will tell you before I leave here. It is something I really wasn't going to say, but I've decided I'll give you more later because I have so many of them. When I was, I don't remember, I was probably a young kid. I would say I was probably 9 or 10, because I remember I walked the neighborhoods alone. And I know I didn't do it when I was younger. So, and living in the area I lived in Ohio, in that neighborhood, I can pretty much track the years I was walking around alone. And when it turned into the 1980s, it pretty much didn't go down that part of Price Hill. So it had to have been when I was 9 or 10. And it was in the area of where the boys club is, and some people watch this video will know. You talk about being close to God. If this isn't a coincidence, then I don't know what is. If this isn't an answer, then I don't know what is. I remember in my head, but you know how memories go, walking down the road and seeing some guy dragging some woman into a car and pretty much abusing her, beating her, whatever. And I remember him looking straight at me from across the street and him saying, "What are you looking at?" In this mean-looking face. And I remember, this is not the first time I've done this. And I remember praying at the time, saying to God, if He give me someone in life that was just amazing, then I promise I would never do that to anyone. And so as time went on, I remember probably a few years later, I was 11, 12, something like that. I don't remember what year. I was probably 11, because it was 1981. It's 1981. So I was probably 11 or 12. It's kind of adult thinking for such a young child, but I remember it was elementary school. There was these, ironically, there was these two twin boys that were girlfriends, their girlfriends were twin girls. Weird, huh? But the twin had a girlfriend. The twin boys' girlfriends were twin girls. It's kind of strange. Never seen anything like that before at the time, and never seen anything like that in my life since. But it would be ironic if they were married now. And maybe that's why they were, because it would freak people out. I don't know. I don't really care. But I remember still being bullied in society and still being treated like the cast out. I remember specifically, in detail, what had happened after. I don't remember what caused me to be upset. I know I was always bullied, and I was always cast out, pushed aside, and not a part of the crowd. But I remember I was upset. And I remember coming home, and I remember I was crying. And I remember my mother coming to my room and telling me that someday there will be somebody for you. And I remember not believing her. But I remember her specifically saying that, someday, you'll have somebody. And I kind of didn't, I didn't believe that. Especially at the time when I was being treated the way I was by other kids at school. But I remember going into, I believe it was the bathroom, or it was in my room. Because I remember specifically looking at a magazine. I picked up a magazine. I don't remember where it was. I picked up a magazine. As I was looking through it, I was picking out the facial feature and speaking to God and saying, this is what I want her face to look like. This is what I want her hair to look like. This is what I want her body features to look like. This is what I want her smile to look like. This is what I want her hair color to look like. I was picking out everything in detail from different pictures and different modeling magazines and telling God, I promise if you give me someone like this, that every detail that I've given you, that I promise I will never treat them like those kids treated others, or the way these women are being treated. Because I grew up in a neighborhood where women were always abused, physically and mentally. Of course, my father was like that. Now, stick with this story. It's going to be really, really interesting. But I made a promise, and I wouldn't do that. Years went by, never really happened. So I never really thought about it, and I've kind of forgotten it. So I thought. 30 years ago this week, I remember walking down the street. This weird as it may sound, this promise was totally forgotten on this day. I remember that promise for a long time, but when this happened on this day, I did not remember it. It was almost like it was blocked out of my mind, which is very odd. Who blocked it out of my mind? I don't know. But I remember that day walking to a mall and seeing a man across the street at a gas station yelling at his girlfriend in a pickup truck. And she's saying no, and he took her by the hair of her head and was banging her head into the glass. And I remember they're standing there thinking, angry, like somebody needs to do something about this jerk, whatever. I remember thinking that like that as I was walking away. But I forgot the promise I made. And I do remember saying I could never treat anybody like that. That day, I met somebody that I found out later that I had a relationship with for 2 years. I met that day. In the 2 years that I've had a relationship with this person, I've forgotten the magazine. I've forgotten the promise. I've forgotten everything. Ironically, it was blocked out of my mind. But for 2 years, I had a relationship with this person that matched everything that matched in that magazine. It was down to the hair color. And I've forgotten about it. And I've also remember I don't remember asking God or telling God, saying, if you give me a model, but I remember down to the hair color, I had a relationship with a person that looked exactly like the ones I picked out for the magazine. Months went by, and I didn't know this, but I found out that this person was a model. Weird. As time went on, I was a stupid teenager. I had a stupid binge drinking problem. There are things I regret. There are things I have a hard time forgiving myself for. To this day, it's very, very difficult. Things that rattle my head behind, because, it's one thing to be forgiven, but it's harder to forgive yourself. And there are things that I've done that I just don't want to bring up, and I never will, that I have a hard time forgiving myself for. And these are the reasons that I was punished. I turned into I was a binge drinker in my teenage years, heading toward around the time that I met this person. And I started to act more like my father. I totally forgot about the promise I made. I started, not physically, but I was mentally abusive. And mentally abusive is just as bad, if not worse, than physical. Because physical, you can heal. But mental, you never do heal. Because it tears you from the inside out. So I've never really forgiven myself for that. And I've always struggled with it. So, after my whole aura was boosted up, and all this, feeling of, amazement, it was cut off at the quick, because of my, probably because of me, mainly because of my idiotic actions. But as it was cut off right at the legs, I lost everything. And I am right now currently making a video about trying to make it a better video. I'm trying to make a documentary. It's hard to, because I don't have the camera. So if anybody has one to sell, let me know. But I'm trying to make a better documentary about homelessness, because what I've been through. I became homeless. I went through all kinds of hell for a year and a half, 2 years. I went through this. I lost the place I lived, lost the job I had, lost the relationship I had with her at the time, lost everything. And after all this had happened in the end, and I finally got back on my feet, and I started to fight back to survive and to become a better person, so to speak, that promise came back to my head. I remembered. All of a sudden, I remembered everything that I promised when I was a kid. And I thought to myself, wow, why didn't I remember this for the last 2 years? How come I've forgotten all about that? And I was shocked that I'd forgotten all about that. So it's just odd that happened. So I started to ask myself, was it God that brought this person to me? Or was it Satan that created this match to destroy me and my spirituality? Just destroy it. Because, certain things don't work with me. Ghosts don't work with me. Fooling me with ghost stuff don't work with me, and fooling me with this don't work, and fooling me with that don't work. So sometimes they have to go through other lengths to destroy me and my relationship with God or my spirituality, because after that happened, I was still being attacked even when I got back on my feet. So I kind of wonder, was it God that did it, or was it, my attack on my spirituality? Because at the time, I was pretty far from God in this relationship, because I was doing things I shouldn't. I was drinking when I shouldn't. I was mean. I was really mean when I have never been that way my entire life. But all of a sudden, and I am no way making excuses because, my actions are my actions and I'm responsible for my own actions. But I do find it odd. There is another story, I'll make a part 2 of this, that after this happened, and I gotten back on my feet, I was stalked and taunted, what I think is been by this person for almost 20 years. Almost to the point where I thought it was satanic. Maybe they're a part of the occult. I have no explanation for how they knew the things they knew, for the attacks that I've had, for the things that I've seen that other people witnessed in my own home, and stuff like that. But and I'll get to that story in a part 2, but the point is that it was ironic that I remembered this after it happened. It was almost to the point where I heard this in my head saying, you remember that promise you made? Well, that's why I stripped it from you. And that's why you went through what you went through, because you're being punished. And this is what I thought for years. So that's just one of the close things that I know. Like I said, I don't know squat. I know a God exists, and He showed me 1 and 2. That's just one of the things, because of a promise I made that was stripped from me because it wasn't because of the person, it was because I wanted something so bad from this world. And it seemed like what was more important was what was in this world than what was what God was intended for me. That's what I think. I think there are a lot of bad things that you shouldn't have in this world, even though they seem great, even though it seems like being a millionaire is great. It seems like this guy's going to end the world, which he won't. You may not see things you clearly enough to know that it may not be as bad as you think it is. It may not be what you say it is. It may not be what you want. Or it could be something that's best for you. You just don't know. You just don't know. But it is strange that all this happened. And during that time, which I'll explain when I'm home about being homeless and all that later on, that's why I'm making the documentary, that there were things that were going on that were personal attacks on me spiritually. And after that, getting back on my feet, I was personally attacked spiritually, trying to knock me back in the place I was, back on the street. So, and I've seen a lot of weird things after it too, even to the point where I was putting, I got a job as a baker and I was putting donuts in a case, and the guy just walks around the corner and he looks at me and says, there are people going to be following you one day. There's people going to be following you. You're going to be huge. And he starts walking backwards, and I'm like, I looked at him and go, dude, I'm just putting donuts in the case. I'm not even a baker. I'm just like an assistant. And he said, you'll see, you watch, you will be. And he walks out of the door, and I'm like, man, what the heck is wrong with this guy? I'm just putting donuts in the case. So, anyway, sorry I ranted. I hope you guys will listen and heed the warning, because it's coming. Be more prepared spiritually, because that's what's important. Just because things seem like you got to fight for your freedoms and fight for your gun rights and speech rights and this and rights that. No one's really free. But believe in yourself. Believe in God. Believe, actually, when you say be kind, when you say acceptance, mean it and stop the hypocrisy. Because this world, really, do you think it's honestly worth it to fight for the nastiness in this world, to fight for the way things are? Is it really worth the dark part of this world? Is it really worth fighting for? I mean, think about it. It's not for me. It isn't. Thanks everybody for paying attention and being a part of the show, and hope you view it more, and I hope you understand what I'm getting at, and I try to explain it a little better. But next week I'll make a part 2 of this so people will figure it out. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Until next time, Reverse 96 FM. Tune in, search there, and I'll have links at the bottom and how you can join. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Get the word out, guys. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.